The Zero Network by Thx4thestories. Read by Oakshadow5. Chapter 7. Izuku Unleashed. Getting into school that day was a nightmare. Reporters were shoving microphones in students' faces, and protesters were lining the streets for 2 blocks around UA with signs with some very imaginative slurs written on them. Izuku had been surprised to find out Aizawa had called his mother the night before to inform her of the leak and offered to pick him up for school the next morning. Izuku had never been more grateful for his teacher than when the car rolled past the angry mob on the way to the staff parking lot. He knew people willing to write such hateful things would be more than willing to attack him. There was also the fact that Aizawa had the sense to also pick up Katsuki, knowing the boy would be likely to fight the angry crowd waiting for Midoriya. The friends sat quietly in the back seat, Katsuki clutching Izuku's hand reassuringly when they saw the signs. Aizawa was kind enough to not mention it. Classes started late, because teachers had to stand outside the gates to assist the students through the crowd. Most of his classmates seemed peeved at the inconvenience, and some, it was unsurprising who, glared hatefully at Izuku like he had wanted this to happen. Aizawa stood solemnly at the front of the class.
By now, you're all aware of the article published about Midoriya last night. The staff is doing a full investigation on who talked to the press, as the details given about Midoriya could have only been obtained by someone within the school. The person, or persons, responsible for endangering our students will no longer be welcome at UA.
There were several sharp intakes of breath, and Uraraka stood up, slamming her hands on her desk. "How's that fair? The only one endangered is him!" She pointed angrily at Izuku. "And he shouldn't even be here! Maybe this is the wake-up call UA needs to see that they shouldn't have let a freak in!" Aizawa's eyes flashed red with his quirk, anger written across his face as he spoke.
Uraraka, you have demonstrated quirkist views time and time again, and I will not stand for it any longer. You are expelled from UA, and a black mark will be put on your record. You will never become a hero.
Shock quickly turned to rage. "You can't expel me for saying what everyone is thinking! I don't know why you keep defending him like he matters, but do you really think the press will be on your side when I tell them I was expelled over the quirkless freak they all hate?" She crossed her arms, thinking she'd won.
The opinion of the press doesn't matter when you're doing the right thing and expelling someone who would act the way you do because of something as pointless as the lack of a quirk is the right thing, both for the students at the school and any civilian who would ever have the misfortune of dealing with you if you were to become a hero.
His eyes trailed over the class.
I was planning to wait on our discussion on discrimination, but clearly you all need to hear this now. A quirk is a tool that you can use to make a situation better or worse, but it doesn't matter what a person's quirk is or if they even have one. Every person is a human being with thoughts and feelings that deserves to be treated like everyone else. If you are willing to so much as think that someone is automatically a villain or less than you in any way because of their quirk, you can never be a real hero. A hero is a person who saves everyone, regardless of their past, race, sexuality, quirk, or any other factor.
He stared directly at Uraraka now.
Heroes don't get to assign importance to some people and ignore or harm others. They are there to save people. Some schools let people like you slip through and go on to become heroes that put shame on the profession, but UA isn't one of them. So, yes, you are expelled, and if you go to the press and say anything even alluding to Midoriya, UA will sue you for slander of their student. She was about to argue further when she was cut off by Izuku's phone. The class turned as one to look at the boy, as his phone made a shrill siren noise. He fished it out of his pocket. "I'm sorry, Sensei, but I have to check it. I have a special app for people to contact me in case of an emergency, so it will alert me even if it's on silent. Everyone knows to only use it in dire situations." The teacher nodded and watched with worried eyes as Izuku opened his phone. Emerald eyes went wide, tears spilling down his face as he let out a broken-sounding, "No, no, 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 no." He pulled up his contacts and called his mother with shaking hands. It rang and rang before going to voicemail. He redialed, and when he heard the voicemail again, he let out a sob. Katsuki was by his side now. "Izuku, what's wrong?"
Izuku looked up at his best friend, horror swimming in his eyes. "They got my address, the apartment, fire, Mom, no answer." He could only gasp out the bare minimum of an explanation between his sobs. Katsuki sucked in a breath. "Izuku, Auntie probably went to work already. Here, let me call her office." He pulled Izuku's phone from his hand. The room was deathly silent as Katsuki held the phone to his ear and waited. His shoulder slammed in relief when Inko answered. "Auntie, hold on a second." He pressed speaker and set the phone in front of the shaking Izuku. His hands pressed to the boy's shoulders. Deku, she's fine. She's on the phone. You can talk to her. His mother's voice rang through the room. Izu? What's going on? Are you hurt? Izuku took a shaky breath. No, Mom. Someone threw a Molotov cocktail through a window. The apartment's on fire, and I thought you were still... He cut off with a sob. Inko made a distressed noise. No, baby, I'm fine. I'm at work and we can replace all of it. We can stay at the Bakugos for now and everything will be fine. Sweetie, breathe. Aizawa had come over to Izuku's desk and addressed his mother.
Mrs. Midoriya, this is Shota Aizawa. I'm going to give your son and Bakugo the rest of the day off from classes. Do you want them to stay here in the teacher's lounge, or would you like to have them dropped off with Bakugo's parents if you can't leave work? I can personally drop them off and ensure their safety.
Thank you for that. I think it's best they stay at UA for the day. I can't leave work, and Mitsuki and Masaru are out of town for work right now. Aizawa nodded.
Very well. You have my word they'll be safe here. I'll bring them with me to pick you up when your work ends, and you have my number if you need anything before then.
There was a startled noise on the other end of the call. There's no need for you to pick me up. He cut her off.
Ma'am, I insist. If they found your address, I don't feel good with you walking home alone.
She said heavily before agreeing, and they ended the call. Izuku was still too shocked to move until Aizawa crouched next to his desk.
Midoriya, are you okay to walk to the teacher's lounge yet?
That snapped him out of his haze. His eyes turned to his teacher, and Aizawa reeled back a bit at the fire in them. Izuku picked up his phone and his fingers tapped rapidly on the screen. Aizawa was baffled, but didn't want to push the boy. He looked to Bakugo, who held up a finger to his teacher, telling him they needed a minute. They watched as Izuku finished typing and waited for a second before he looked up at Aizawa. Sensei, there was a tweet from an anonymous account telling everyone my address, apartment number and all. I have a friend who was already looking into it. They're the one who sent the message about the fire. The account was traced back to an account created on Uraraka's phone. The girl in question let out a scream of rage. How dare you accuse me of that? You have no proof. You just want to get rid of me because I'm the only one willing to tell you that you don't belong here. Izuku leveled a look at the girl that sent shivers down the spines of everyone who saw it. I honestly couldn't give less of a shit what you think about me if my life depended on it. Shock ran over the faces of several people in the room. Most of them had never heard the usually cheerful boy cuss. I've dealt with ignorant bitches like you my entire life. There isn't a single thing you could say or do that would matter to me. He stood from his seat. You never mattered to me at all, but you endangered my mother. You got my address from the student roster and gave it out, and you can't claim you didn't know what would happen because the tweet was on a thread of people discussing murdering me and my family. The only thing you should be right now is grateful that I discovered this in a room full of people. Because my mother is the most important person in my life, and if I had found out that you could have caused her death with no witnesses, no one would ever find the pieces of your body. Izuku watched the girl's mouth open and close like a fish before he looked around the room and addressed his classmates. I'm going to forward the evidence that Uraraka was responsible for this to Aizawa and the police so they can verify it, but you should all consider this. The tweet was sent out right before class started. That was less than 20 minutes ago. The fire was started 11 minutes ago. I was alerted to the fire within 2 minutes of it starting, and the tweet was discovered and tracked back to the source 6 minutes later. You all want to believe I'm a useless, quirkless nobody, but if you don't think I can handle things myself, just remember that I have friends who can help me. I don't care what you say or do to me, but if anyone here ever messes with my friends or family again, you'll see that my friends are capable of a lot more. With that, Izuku grabbed his things and, dragging Katsuki behind him, left the silent room. Izuku nodded to Nezu and the security guard, who were waiting outside to escort the former student off the campus, and made his way to the teacher's lounge. Back in the classroom, his classmates watched Uraraka make a scene as she was removed in shock. One thought rang through the minds of the students. Who exactly is Izuku Midoriya? Oh my gosh, this chapter was so good! I love giving Izuku a voice when he snaps. This was so good! Oh, it's so satisfying! But also the anxiety in the first part of the chapter, when we didn't know if Inko was dead. But yeah, this was a great chapter. But anyways guys, I hope you all enjoyed chapter 7 of the Zero Network, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!